Happy New Year, everyone. I say Happy New Year. Happy New Year about 10 days ago. Yes, I'm fairly late. I was going to do this update probably by the end of last year. But unfortunately I had a really nasty cough for a while. I'm still not 100%, I'm still coughing a little bit, but it seems to have calmed down quite a bit, so I'm able to do this update. Good percentage of these I bought last year. There's only like 1 or 2 items that I bought this year. It's not as big as my previous updates, but we might as well get started. The first item is a very, very, very unorthodox purchase, even by my standards, considering the fact that I don't even have a means to play it yet. And this is... it's quite big. Theme music for the film 2001: A Space Odyssey and other great movie themes. Right, this was released in 1970. I got this more as a piece of memorabilia, if anything else, because at the time we recorded this video, I don't even have a record player. I'll probably get one later this year, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I got this as a piece of memorabilia, and it's probably the closest thing I have to owning a movie prop, short of actually owning the actual movie prop. The reason why I say that is because if, like me, you're a big fan of Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, you might actually recognise this record. During the scene when Alex goes into the record store, which was actually a real record store, it was the Chelsea drugstore on Kings Road, London, which is now McDonald's. When he goes to the till and picks up the 2 girls, this record was predominantly shown, and a lot of Kubrick fans think it's the actual 2001: A Space Odyssey soundtrack. I mean, both films were directed by Stanley Kubrick after all, so Kubrick slipping in an Easter egg to another one of his films, but it isn't. This is actually a compilation album of various other themes. The actual 2001 soundtrack does appear in the same record store, but it's a blink you'll miss it moment. But yeah, I don't have a means to play this yet, so I don't know what it's like. I'm kind of stuck as a film buff in this regard, because the only 2 films on this record I'd heard of are 2001: A Space Odyssey and Rosemary's Baby. I don't think I'd heard of any of the others till I got this. But yeah, it's not a particularly rare record by any stretch of the imagination, so don't let people overcharge you for it. And I mean, it's not in the best of condition. You can see right there the cover's sort of fraying a bit. It's very hard to find an example of this with a perfect sleeve, so maybe the printing process just wasn't up to scratch, and that combined with the fact that this is like 54 years old, so this is a UK pressing, and this is identical to the one shown in A Clockwork Orange, but I highly doubt this is the actual one that was shown. There is an American pressing. The cover is identical, except the alignment of the text is different at the front, and it says it doesn't say 99 on the top. If it says 99, then it's a UK pressing. But yeah, here's the record itself. There's side A. This was released in 1970. So this, when A Clockwork Orange was filmed, this was a fairly new album, because Clockwork Orange was filmed between 1970 and 71. Made in England, so you can tell it's a British pressing. Now, it's not in the best condition, unfortunately. There are a couple of scratches, quite prominently right there. That's a fairly deep scratch. I don't know how that would affect playback, because obviously, as I said, I don't have a record player. I believe you can, with scratched records, you can repair them, but you have to really know what you're doing when you do it. So if it really does have playback problems, then I could probably just get it up on eBay and get another copy, because it's not like the end of the world, and I think Discogs might have it cheaper. Side B looks to be in better shape though. But yeah, Yeah, since I really haven't been in contact with records that often, in fact, you can kind of tell the fact that I'm holding this at an awkward angle so you can see it properly. One thing that really does take me by surprise is how bloody big they are. You know, this is like 12-inch or something, so it's fairly big. I mean, here's a standard CD dual case for comparison. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess if I do ever start like a record collection, I'm gonna have to really put a limit to how many I buy because they're not the easiest things to store. So next we move on to a VHS tape, my sole VHS tape of this update, and another very unorthodox purchase for me because this is not normally the kind of stuff I would buy on tape, but I just thought, you know, what the hell. This is hand-rolled puffin stuff. So I couldn't resist making that joke. The reason I got this is because a good friend of the channel, Dan, over at TYTD Reviews, last month he did a 24-hour housewarming party on his Discord server. And one of the films that was screened there was actually the film version of this. It was a TV show initially, and then it turned into a film. And I did actually really enjoy the film, you know, for what it was. It's a very, very, very fucking weird, like, even by the standards of kids' TV from like the 60s and 70s, this is fucking mental. Yeah, but it's kind of mental in a good way, not in a bad way, if you get where I'm coming from. And so I decided, kind of as a bit of a laugh, you know, I'd buy a couple of episodes on tape and screen them on the server, which I'll probably do, I don't know, next week or week after. But yeah, this it's an American series, only lasted for a single season in 1969. I don't know that much about its history in the UK, or if it was or if it was exported to any other countries. I mean, it must have been shown on TV here at some point, because, you know, to warrant it getting a VHS release. And about 20 years ago, the whole series was put out on DVD. I'm not going to bother getting the whole series on DVD because, you know, why would I bother? But yeah, this is not the whole series. This only contains the first 3 episodes. The Magic Path, The Wheelie Bird, and Showbiz Witch. But yeah, this is a 1986 release from Channel 5. Not the television Channel 5. This is nothing to do with the TV station. This came out about a decade before we actually got a Channel 5, so I always kind of assumed the company being called Channel 5 was a play on the fact that we only had 4 TV channels at the time. But yep, here's the tape. Comes in a Channel 5 embossed case. This was quite a difficult tape to get. It's not a particularly rare tape, but there aren't that many listings on eBay, and very rarely new listings get added. In fact, I think the 2 listings I purchased from had been up for well over a year, if not 2 years. But yeah, I had a bit of a nightmare this one, because my first copy I got... this is not the exact first copy I got, because I did a sort of Frankenstein monster on this. The tape was clean, it wasn't mouldy or anything, but unfortunately the tape was really badly crumpled, like right at the start. And it's not right at the start, you know, where it doesn't really matter that much. Unfortunately, this is a fair bit into the tape, and it does affect the program material. So yeah, it wasn't in the best shape, and I didn't really want to play it that often. So obviously I was intending to digitize it so I could screen it, and I don't think the guys would appreciate really, really bad quality. So I got a second copy. The second copy, the tape is in physically better shape. See, it's nice and flat as it should be. Unfortunately, it was a bit mouldy, which was a pain in the arse because I hate having to do with mouldy tapes. I could have got in touch with the seller and whinged, but I couldn't be asked because there aren't that many copies floating around online. I decided, I'll just have a go at cleaning it. I cleaned it up. It cleaned up well. It doesn't play perfectly. It does have the odd funny moments, but for the most part, it's in better condition than my other copy. Now, the reason why I mentioned I did a Frankenstein's monster is the cassette itself, like the cassette shell, and the box and the sleeve. This is actually from the first copy with the damaged tape. This is actually the second copy. What I did was I swapped the reels round because it's the exact same tape stock. It's the Maxell stock with the brown flap. I did this because the sleeve is not in the best condition on my first copy. As you can see right there, it's quite, I don't know, chewed up or something up there, which probably leads credence to my theory that this was either eaten by a dodgy machine, or I don't know, some child had it in the last 39 years and they weren't really into looking after their stuff, so they probably ruined it. Yeah, by the way, if the child who had this previously is watching this, which I highly doubt, fuck you. Okay? And also on my second copy, they've got like sticker residue, and it's not the cleanest case, and there's an old Oxfam sticker and the sleeve is faded. So I kept and also the tape itself, the label had a bit of some marks on it. I don't know what those marks are. Yep, I swapped the cassette over and kept the reels. But yeah, my first copy, both tapes have a production date at the end. My first copy said the 25th of August 1986, and my second copy said the 21st of August 1986, so printed only a few days apart. And this also includes a pretty rare 5-minute sort of trailer at the start for other Channel 5 titles. So yeah, that's kind of cool. So now we move on to the optical media, the DVDs and the Blu-rays and so on. And we actually start off with a DVD. And this is... And what's a DVD and a book? This is Late Night Horror, the complete guide to the BBC horror series. I bought this from Kaleidoscope. Late Night Horror, for those who don't know, was it was a British horror anthology series from 1968. Only lasted for a single series. It was the first, I believe it was the first ever horror series to be made in colour. And it was on BBC Two only, because BBC One and ITV didn't have a colour service. Only BBC Two had a colour service at the time. Obviously, as you might expect with BBC late 60s, all the episodes were junked. And at the moment, only one episode is known to exist, and it's an episode called The Corpse Can't Play, which was the third episode, which turned up back in 2016 as a black and white telly recording. And it wasn't until 2022 they were able to fully restore it to full colour and release it on DVD. Yeah, this was put out by Kaleidoscope, who the non-profit TV organisation who recovered a lot of classic TV. But yeah, first thing we get is a fairly lengthy book on the series, going through the production history and so on. Can't wait to get into this. Unfortunately, the book itself, although the content's really good, the way it's presented is a little less to be desired, because there are some weird things like the font changes, like sometimes from page to page. Some of the pages have weird printing errors, like right up there. I don't know how that happened. And I think I can't find an example at the moment, but some of them have sort of weird markings like between some of the words. And I'd heard like some stories about some earlier pressings of this having like weird stains at the front. This is a fairly new pressing. This book was originally published in 2022, but this particular edition was printed on the 29th of November 2024, which this must have been a fairly new pressing, because I ordered this on the 12th of November, I think, and it wasn't until I think the 12th of December when it finally arrived. And we also get a DVD containing the episode itself. This includes the episode in both black and white and colour, as well as a trailer for the series which was recovered, and some other bits and bobs. But yeah, Corpse Can't Play is absolutely fantastic. A bit of a slow burn, particularly near the start, but definitely a very, very, very well made piece of horror from the late 60s. And the ending in particular, like, is quite, even though the special effects are somewhat ropey by today's standards, they are still fairly shocking, you know, for the time. You know, you do wonder, I'm not going to give away the ending, but when you watch the ending, you do think, how the hell did they get away with this back in the 60s? And but yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. And I do wish more episodes would turn up. Some of them were remade into other shows. Like there was an episode called William and Mary, which was adapted into an episode of Tales of the Unexpected, because Roald Dahl wrote the original short story. But yeah, this is definitely very nice. My problem with this set, aside from some of the slight printing errors with the books, is a bit overpriced. Like, this is, to buy this new from Kaleidoscope, it's about £24 plus £4 postage. I can understand why they would cost so much, because, you know, this is self-released, self-published, and the money goes back to Kaleidoscope and so on. But I do think 24 quid's a bit much for it. I do think it would have been better at around the £15-20 mark. But whatever. But yeah, definitely worth a watch. The episode itself is on YouTube for free, but it's only the unrestored black and white version. If you want the restored colour version, you're going to have to get the DVD. Next up, we've got John Shuttleworth, One Foot in the Gravy Live. Big fan of John Shuttleworth, if you don't know. John Shuttleworth is a fictional character created by comedian Graham Fellows, who is basically the singer-songwriter sensation from Sheffield, South Yorkshire. But he's got like a painful lack of self-awareness and like absolutely no talent whatsoever. And it's very, very gentle humour. My friend Dan said he's sort of like the British version of Hank Hill. But yeah, big fan of John Shuttleworth. This is his 2001 live tour. He's done quite a few live tours. In fact, there's a new show coming out this year, which I'm really looking forward to. Yeah, he did quite a lot of live shows, but for some reason they only ever released like 2 on DVD. This and the Minotaur. This one was filmed at the Shepherd's Bush Empire in London. Yeah, it's probably my least favourite of a lot of the non-Shuttleworth stuff I've seen, but it's still really good. Like even like lower tier John Shuttleworth is still absolutely worth your time. So yeah, that was One Foot in the Gravy. Next up, we've got Aardman Classics. really, really nice DVD full of many of Aardman's short films. When you think of Aardman, you think of Wallace and Gromit, and maybe if you're of a certain age, you might think of Morph. But this is a compilation DVD of a lot of their early short films, as well as a few sort of later ones. Most of these were pre-Wallace and Gromit, but there were a couple of post-Wallace and Gromit ones on here. This is the a reissue from the makers of Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, so this was sort of a cash-in to that. The original DVD came out in 2000, but the master's the same, so if you buy this, you're not really getting anything different. But yeah, some of the shorts can be a bit hit and miss on this. Some of the CGI ones in particular are a bit on the crap side. Minotaur and Little Nurkin, that's pretty fucking bad. Al Dante, that's another bad one. Yeah, some of the lip sync shorts can be a bit hit and miss as well. I think because of the way they were done, because they would record just normal people having regular conversations and do little animations around it. I think sometimes if the conversation isn't that interesting, like, you can really tell, when it's just not that good. But there's a couple of really good shorts on here from the lip sync series. Creature Comforts, done by Nick Park, is of course an absolute classic. Early Bird, that's another really good one. Yeah, there's some really good shorts on here as well. Not Without My Handbag, that one's absolutely hilarious. Stage Fright, that's quite an enjoyable one with Graham Fellows doing the voice. A short which notoriously scared the shit out of many kids because it was included as an extra on the Curse of the Were-Rabbit DVD. Yep. Now, I must stress, this DVD's not really aimed at kids at all. It's not particularly family friendly. You tend, with Aardman, you think of Wallace and Gromit, you think of, them doing like fairly innocent stuff. But a lot of the shorts on here are very much aimed at adults. The 12 rating actually means something on here. There's a short on here called Babylon, which was done for the Sweet Disaster series, and if you know how that film ends, I'm surprised the set didn't get a 15 rating just for that film alone. If you know how that film ends. But in general, a very nice set. Yeah, this also includes an Angry Kids short as well as an Easter egg. Next one is another animation title, and this is Rock and Roll. This is a Canadian animated film from the early 80s, geared towards adults. Sort of a concert movie kind of thing. Concert movie sci-fi thing. I first saw this film like 10 years ago or something, and I remember really enjoying it. But I don't think I've watched it since, so I'm going to give it another go at some point. Not a particularly easy DVD to get. This one demands quite a high price. I ended up winning it for about 30 quid in an eBay auction. Probably because I kind of know it'd be very hard to get this for any cheaper. Yeah, it was a massive bomb when it came out back in the 80s. But has kind of sort of developed a cult following, but not really. I mean, this film's not as well known as something like Heavy Metal, for example. Yeah, this includes a lot of sort of new wave sort of musical artists who contributed to the soundtrack and provided the vocals for the singing. So you get, Blondie, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, Earth, Wind and Fire, and so on. Yeah, easily the best part of the movie is definitely the soundtrack. Kind of a shame they never actually did do a proper soundtrack release for this, because the film didn't do very well. But I believe many of the songs were released as like B-sides and so on some of the and as well as on compilation albums. So there is like a bootleg soundtrack out there. It's well worth tracking down. Yeah, this is a 2-disc edition put out by Odeon, who are now known as Screenbound. This was put out in America by Unearthed Films, who I believe also put it out on Blu-ray. I believe the American version was partially funded by crowdfunding back in like 2005 or whenever. The UK version wasn't crowdfunded. I think they did base it heavily on the Unearthed Films version, like some of the extras ported over. Not all the extras were ported over. Like there's like 2 different cuts of the film. Like there's the American version, which is the more common version, and the Canadian version, where like Omar's voice is different and so on. This does not contain the Canadian version. This only contains the American version for some reason, which is a bit of a waste. And also, for fuck's sake, 175 minutes. I don't recall Rock and Roll being that long. They've just like added up all the extras. Like, who the fuck does that? Come on. But yeah, inside here we have the 2 discs, and we also get a booklet. All access areas, Mock, live from Town Power Plant. Mock was sort of the villain of the movie, sort of a washed up, aging sort of rock star who's a bit of a psycho. He's based on heavily on Mick. He's sort of a parody of Mick Jagger. In fact, I believe in the script the character's name was actually Mock Swagger, but in the film itself they don't actually give him a last name because they probably thought it was a bit too on the nose, like borderline lawsuit, too much on the nose. But yeah, this is a nice little booklet. It's got like an interview with some of the people involved and some concept art and stuff. But yeah, despite the fact that the extras, like, it doesn't have all the extras, it does still have a fairly nice selection of extras. Mostly a lot of making of stuff. The Devil and Daniel Mouse, that's a short film from the late 70s. Very, very nice little sort of Halloween themed TV special, which Rock and Roll took a lot of influence from, since both were done by Nirvana. And not the Kurt Cobain Nirvana, by the way. The animation studio. The way the film's presented on here, it's the transfer. The film itself looks really nice. It's been restored and so on, but unfortunately, the way it was orphaned onto the disc is a little less to be desired, because it's got quite a lot of compression artifacting in a lot of places. Like, it does look pretty sloppy, like especially for a professional release. I don't know why it looks so sloppy. I guess probably because they're using single layer discs when they really should have been using dual layer. But mind you, like, Odeon kind of tends to have a pretty bad reputation anyway, so that's probably why. Because like the only other Odeon DVD I've got is Ken Russell's Marla, which has a slightly ropey transfer. They put out Tommy on Blu-ray, and Tommy as a decent transfer, but that's just the Sony transfer. They also put out the that RoboCop TV show on Blu-ray, and apparently like the transfer is like an absolute AI mess. Like, it looks absolutely atrocious from what I hear. And so this is one of the better looking transfers, but it's still not great at all. Despite this being a PAL disc and was sold in PAL territories, it doesn't have PAL speed up, I don't think. I think this is possibly one of the only PAL titles I've got that doesn't have PAL speed up. The only 2 others in my knowledge that don't have PAL speed up are Pink Floyd The Wall and The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat. But yeah, other than the shortcomings with the transfers, I really should watch this film again. So since this came out a few years after Heavy Metal, which is better? Honestly, it's really, really hard to say. Both both films, they're similar in a lot of cases, but also very different in a lot of cases as well. And I saw both films like years apart and years ago, so I can't really compare them. I think Rock and Rolls might be better, but I'm not sure. I really need to watch both films again, actually. And yeah. So now move on to the Blu-rays, and first couple are some more adult animations, and these two are two Ralph Bakshi films. The first one is The Lord of the Rings, the original animated classic. This was the first, I believe this was the first like proper adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. This came out in the 70s, so this was long before the Peter Jackson films. Directed by Ralph Bakshi, big fan of Ralph Bakshi. I actually saw this before I saw the Peter Jackson version. Now, the reason why I have this and not the Peter Jackson versions is because this title I think is out of print, but I'm not sure. It was out of print for ages and went for quite a bit on Blu-ray. The DVD's dead cheap, but not the Blu-ray. Until one day it showed up on Amazon, being sold by Amazon themselves, not on Amazon Marketplace. And it was going for like 10 quid, and so I just jumped on it. Now, I don't have the Peter Jackson films yet because they're not really a priority for me at the moment. And also, the Peter Jackson films, they're always in print. They're always in print. They always get reissued. I don't think they've ever been out of print. So there's really no point at the moment. I will get the Peter Jackson versions eventually. Because I do... Obviously, the Peter Jackson films are better. But the Bakshi version's still definitely worth a watch, especially if you're like a Bakshi fan, or if you're like a Lord of the Rings completionist or something. It's not as bad as some people make it out to be. It is very, very flawed. I mean, the big issue with the film, I think, as most people know, it doesn't have an ending, because it was originally going to be two films, adapting all three of the books. And the first film was pretty much the entirety of Fellowship of the Ring and a good chunk of the Two Towers. And it ends with the Battle of Helm's Deep. And it doesn't... And because I believe this film didn't make enough money at the time and the reviews weren't great, they didn't make the sequel, so the story was never completed. And there is a TV version of Return of the King done by Rankin Bass, but we don't talk about that. Yeah, it's kind of a shame that they never actually finished this. So the film just sort of stops. But still definitely worth a watch. Yep, and here's the disc. The reason why I got the Blu-ray over the DVD was because I thought this had more extras than it did. It's got more extras than the DVD, obviously, because I think the DVD was like bare bones. But the extras on here are Forging Through the Darkness, which is a documentary on Ralph Bakshi, which I've seen before and is definitely a very good one. There's a lot of really good Ralph Bakshi documentaries out there. And bizarrely, there's a trailer for, I think it's Star Wars Clone Wars Season 1. But the thing is, though, it's not a trailer that like plays before the film, like you'd normally expect. It's a selectable bonus feature, which is weird. Like, I mean, I think the only Star Wars connection this has is Anthony Daniels does one of the voices. But other than that, it's just weird. Then we move on to another Ralph Bakshi film, and this is American Pop. Very, very good film, this. Some people consider this sort of Bakshi's masterpiece. Personally, I don't agree. I mean, it's very good, but it's not my favourite. I'm more of a Heavy Traffic kind of guy. But still, definitely worth a watch. Sort of, I guess probably, I wouldn't call it his most mature film, but probably his most sort of sensitive film. Follows a Russian Jewish immigrant family through 4 generations in the 20th century and told through popular music. Definitely a very good film. My only real problem with it really is the fact that because it's a semi-anthology film, the segment with Tony, who's the third member of the family, does get way too much focus. I can kind of get why, in a way, because that was sort of the era Bakshi grew up in, and also I believe Bakshi wanted to do an adaptation of Catcher in the Rye, but the writer of that book is pretty, protective over it, and that's why there's never been a film adaptation of Catcher in the Rye. And I don't think there'll ever be one. And so so Tony's sort of story was Bakshi trying to do his own version of Catcher in the Rye. And I do think like the other sections are sort of almost glossed over, which is a shame really, because I think if it was a bit more if it had a bit more time to breathe rather than just having one story fleshed out and the rest kind of glanced over, I do think it would have been Bakshi's masterpiece. But I don't know. But I mean, it's still very good. Still definitely worth a watch. This is an American import. This actually came out on Blu-ray last year. It's region free, thankfully, so it works on a UK player. I can't see this getting a UK release because Bakshi's films, for some reason, like physical media companies in the UK have like a massive hate boner for Ralph Bakshi, and very few of his films are easily available in this country on Blu-ray, even on DVD. That many of his films kind of have never escaped VHS. But mind you, might look like 5 minutes later, I don't know, Indicator will announce they're releasing this on Blu-ray with like tons of extras. Because this Blu-ray is completely bare bones, it has absolutely no extras. In fact, it doesn't even have a menu, which is a bit annoying, really. Because I mean, you think they'd probably. You think Sony would, get the money together and do like a commentary and so on? Because I mean, Bakshi's still alive, so you could get him in to do one. But yep, here's the disc. Also, similar to Lord of the Rings, this film is completely animated in rotoscope, which I'm not the biggest fan of rotoscope. I do think it's kind of pointless in a way, If you're going to trace over live action actors, you might as well just make a live action film. But I can understand like the arguments, for it in this particular case, and I do think the rotoscoping is definitely improved. Whereas the rotoscoping in Lord of the Rings was a bit hit and miss, because sometimes I think to save money, like he'd just take the film and just the live action film and just add tons of filters to it. And you can tell from a mile off, like, when it's properly animated and when it's just live action with weird filters over it, and there's no, like, rhyme or reason for any of it. It's weird. But I do think American Pop's kind of better made as a film. Now move on to some live action films, and the first one is one I actually got for Christmas, and the most recent film out of this lot, and it is Beetlejuice. The long-awaited and heavily unneeded legacy sequel to Beetlejuice. Really enjoy the first Beetlejuice film. This one's nowhere near as good as the first one. It's enjoyable. It's a well-made film and everything. Like with a lot of these legacy sequels, where I think this is the same complaint that can be lobbied against a lot of these legacy sequels. They're fun, but they're utterly unnecessary. Like, did we really need a Beetlejuice sequel? Like, the first Beetlejuice still stands up remarkably well on its own. It does take a bit of time to get going, unfortunately, as well. And also, a bit excessive with the Jeffrey Jones references. Although, the bit when he gets killed off is pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, it still doesn't make it any less awkward that they're alluding to Jeffrey Jones. But overall, it was all right. Not great, but it's I do think it's at least worth one watch. But yeah, here's the disc. This originally came in an eco box, which seems to be the thing Warner Brothers have been doing recently. So I swapped it for a proper one. So next up we've got my only purchase from this year, and it arrived earlier today, and this is Weird Al Yankovic in UHF. Very, very, very funny film that of course birthed the Twinkie Wiener Sandwich. I'm not that familiar with Weird Al Yankovic. I don't think Weird Al's like that well known in this country when compared to the United States. So I'm not like that familiar with Weird Al, but I really do enjoy the film. I think the film's absolutely hilarious. Sort of an underdog sort of story about I think it's about a guy who runs like a public access TV station, and like they commission some of the weirdest shows. I think that's what it was about. I've not seen it in a couple of years now, so can't wait to give it another watch. But yeah, the Rambo parody in particular, this is really, really funny. This Blu-ray is out of print and does go for quite a bit. I managed to get mine for about 20 quid, which is a bit of a bargain for me. But yeah, here's the disc, and inside we have one of the original posters. Next up we've got Scrooged, starring Bill Murray, the adaptation of A Christmas Carol, or sort of adaptation, sort of parody of it. And we watched this last Christmas, and a very, very enjoyable film. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Kind of ironic now, because Bill Murray, from what I understand, is a bit of a twat in real life, so it's kind of oddly fitting he's playing sort of like a Scrooge type character. Yeah, definitely a very good film. Here's the disc. Next up we've got Good Morning Vietnam. Absolute classic Robin Williams film. I rewatched this recently, and it's not as good as I remember it being, but it's still definitely really worth a watch. It's not my favourite Robin Williams film. My favourite Robin Williams film is probably still Dead Poets Society. But definitely worth a watch, especially if you're a fan of Robin Williams. Based loosely on a true story, because Adrian Cronau was sort of a real DJ during the Vietnam War, and definitely worth a watch. Here's the disc. Next up we've got Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I got this in the last Arrow sale. Very, very, very good film this. Very, very... Basically a film which feels like what I imagine it's like on an acid trip. Very weird film, but definitely very enjoyable. The critics didn't like it at the time, but I thought it was pretty good. Again, I can't imagine this being a film for everyone, but I very much enjoyed it. Yep, here's the disc. Inside we have reversible artwork, which is the same as on the Thomas S. Hunter's novel. I believe for a while this was considered unfilmable, because the book was published in the early 70s, and it wasn't until the late 90s when the film came out, because nobody knew kind of what the hell to do with it. I think Terry Gilliam was one of the better choices to direct it. But anyway, we get a little card advertising Arrow Video Player and The Day of the Beast. Next up, we've got a few Frank Henenlotter films. Frank Henenlotter was a sort of horror exploitation director who was active during the 80s and 90s. He mostly does documentaries now. But yeah, I've watched his main films, and he has grown to be one of my favourite directors, for sure. I've liked all his films to a degree. But we'll start off with the first one. This is actually a box set. This is the Basket Case trilogy. Essential sort of B-movie viewing. Sort of horror comedies. From the first one came out in the 80s, which was his first film, and the sequels came out in the 90s. But yeah, this was put out by Second Sight. This set's now to print and goes for quite a bit. I managed to win mine in auction for about £20, new and sealed, which was definitely a bargain. They have Arrow have recently released the first Basket Case in 4K, but I'm not really bothering that because this Blu-ray's fine as it is. But yep, I'm here the discs. Basket Case 1, a very, very enjoyable B movie. Feels a lot more like a proper horror film, but it is a very, very ridiculous film. I think most people know the plot of Basket Case. It's about a guy who has a deformed Siamese twin, and they're separated, and they take revenge on the doctors who separated them. But yeah, very, very enjoyable. Made me laugh pretty much consistently. And I mean, I don't fully know if it was meant to be funny, but it was still hilarious. The kill scenes like had me in stitches because they're just so stupid. I don't think it's his best film, because I do think I'm probably going to end up spoiling it a bit. The ending moments in particular, I think, when we find out about Belial's sort of sexual urges, they are going a bit too far, and there's quite a nasty scene right at the end, which really I think was completely unnecessary and just sort of tipped the film into the very, very dodgy category. I mean, even by the standards of a B movie. But yeah, and the ending did kind of derail it for me, but other than that, it's still very enjoyable. Basket Case 2, this one definitely tips more into the comedy and more into the weirdness of it. I mean, how on earth could you make a sequel to Basket Case? But I think Frank Henenlotter did really make it work. When Dwayne, who's the main guy in it, and Belial end up with this orphanage full of all these weird sort of mutant human type things, run by this insane old woman. Definitely worth watching. Not as good as the first Basket Case, but still definitely very enjoyable. I was just sort of vibing with it when I was watching it. I didn't fully know what was going on, but I was just going along with the flow of it. Basket Case 3, definitely the weakest of the trilogy, but again, definitely worth a watch. This one definitely tips far more into the comedy. In fact, I wouldn't call this a horror movie at all. But still absolutely hilarious. There's quite an infamous kill scene in this, which they always use the screenshot of it in ridiculous movie deaths. I think you'll know what the screenshot is. But yeah, definitely worth a watch. And then we move on to, in my opinion, his best film, Brain Damage. Surprisingly, despite the fact that it's a B movie, despite the fact that it's a weird horror comedy sort of B movie, and the monster in it looks like this, it's actually one of the it's surprisingly one of the most mature films I've ever seen about sort of the horrors of drug addiction. I mean, it's not literally about drugs, it's a metaphor. But definitely one of the more effective films, like, you know, showing, you know, the effects of drugs and the effects of withdrawal and so on. It is surprisingly his most mature film. In that, I believe Frank Henenlotter had I think it was a cocaine or heroin addiction before he made this film, and you can definitely see how he took that influence and made it into this film. But that's not to say the film is, you know, completely depressing, because this film is also really, really funny. The main creature in this, Elmer, he's an absolute riot. The bit when he's singing show tunes to the main character while he's suffering from withdrawal, like, shouldn't be as funny as it is. But yeah, definitely worth watching. Not as well known as some of Frank Henenlotter's other films like Basket Case or Frankenhooker, but it does have a cult following, and I think it's well and truly deserved. Here's the disc, and we have the reverse spine that it came with, and inside with a little leaflet for our video player, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that. But yeah, this Blu-ray, I don't know if it's out of print or not. Amazon seems to be a bit hit and miss on it, and as to HMV. I was able to get this in the Arrow sale for about £8 or something. I think this was the last copy they had in stock. But yeah, it's definitely a very nice Blu-ray. It's got a ton of extras on it. A lot of the documentaries about the making of the film were well worth a watch, and I'm honestly amazed, you know, by, you know, what they did with the creature effects, you know, considering just how low the budget was. Next one is probably his second most famous film, and it is Frankenhooker, which Brain Damage is still his masterpiece, but Frankenhooker is definitely a close second. Absolutely hilarious film, probably his dumbest film. In fact, this is probably, if John Waters ever made a horror movie, that's the best way I can describe this film. In fact, I did see a lot of parallels between, like, John Waters and Frank Henenlotter when I was watching his films. I know both people were very heavily influenced by Herschel Gordon Lewis, but yeah, I was absolutely dying of laughter, mainly at a lot of the deadpan dialogue, and just kind of how ludicrous this film gets. I mean, this film is absolutely ludicrous. I can, like with a lot of B movies, I can see some people not getting on with it, but I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Here's the disc. And inside where the reversible artwork that it came with. I got this from eBay secondhand because I think this title might be out of print, because I couldn't find it in HMV, and I couldn't find it in HMV Amazon, and HMV online said it was out of stock. I think this is a more recent pressing because this doesn't have a booklet, but inside we get a advert for Arrow and a postcard for Exorcist 3. So Exorcist 3 I think came out on Blu-ray in 2019, so this is a fairly newish pressing. This Blu-ray came out in 2013. But yeah, definitely worth a watch. Next up we've got probably Frank Henenlotter's most horniest movie, Bad Biology. Very weird film again. Not his best film, but definitely one which I did definitely very much enjoy. Plot wise, unlike a lot of his other films, this one didn't really feel like it had a consistent plot. I mean, even reading a plot synopsis, I've still got no idea what was going on. But I was just sort of vibing with it because this one was absolutely fun. Basically about a woman with like 7 clitorises and a guy with a dick with a mind of its own. So yeah, definitely not a film for the faint-hearted. It's an 18 for a reason. But yeah, This came out many years after his other films, because his other films came out from the early 80s to the early 90s. This came out in 2008. And one of the more interesting stories is Frank Henenlotter had, I think it was prostate cancer when he was filming this, and he was shooting this movie in between chemotherapy sessions. So the fact that he was able to get a film like this out, whilst he was battling with cancer, is just amazing to me. But yeah, it's not as good as like Basket Case or Brain Damage or Frankenhooker, but I still think it's worth a watch. This was released by Severin, who I didn't know Severin operated in the UK until I got this Blu-ray. But they have started releasing a lot of stuff in the UK. They've released some of the Video Nasties, for example. This Blu-ray came out in 2024. I believe this was actually released like in February or whenever. But yep, here's the disc. And then finally we've got a box set. This is Bob Clark's Horror Collection. So this contains Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, Death Dream, also known as Dead of Night, and Black Christmas. I wasn't initially planning to buy this box set. In fact, I didn't even know this box set existed. I was intending around the Christmas season to just get Black Christmas on its own. But then I saw this on HMV's website and they had a promo code for it, so I got this half price, which was just amazing. Yeah, this was put out by 101 Films. These films all came out in the early 70s. So the first one is, I believe this was Bob Clark's first film, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. You're invited to Orville's coming out party. It'll be a scream, yours. Orville, not the puppet, by the way. Yeah, very, very, very weird film. Does take some time to get going. Not his best film, but I do think this is really good fun, like for what it is. Very, very bizarre film. But yeah, here's the disc. And inside we have some reversible artwork, which was the artwork it came with. Next one is Dead of Night, also known as Death Dream. I believe the original title was Dead of Night, but they call it Death Dream because there was another film and there was a TV series as well called Dead of Night. This is easily the best film of the box set, and that this was, I'd not really heard that much about this film before I got this box set, but after watching it, this is easily the best film of the set. Really good as a horror, and also surprisingly quite bleak as a film goes. Definitely sort of a bleak exploration of like PTSD and stuff like that after the Vietnam War. And definitely worth a watch, in my opinion. Easily one of his most underrated. Here's the inside, there's the artwork that it came with. And then finally we've got Black Christmas. This is, I believe it's considered one of the first proper slasher films. Like this was before Halloween and so on. I think this might have come out just before Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A very good film, a bit overrated perhaps. I don't think it's as good as some people make it out to be, but definitely worth a watch. Very sort of different take on the slasher genre. Where you actually get to hear the killer's voice, and the killer is like taunting his victims over the phone. But yeah, definitely worth a watch. Unfortunately, this Blu-ray's not that good, purely because of the sound mix. Now, I'm not much of an audiophile. I openly admit I'm more of a videophile, if anything else. The problem with it really is This is a 5.1 up mix. In fact, I think all these Bob Clark films have a 5.1 up mix. But the sound, but the music and like the sound effects are just awful. They're just really, really sloppily put in because they're way too loud and they sound far too clean for a movie from the 70s, especially when you compare it to the somewhat slightly muffled dialogue. Which is a shame, really, and this doesn't have the original mono mix on here at all, which is absolutely really fucking annoying. It's a shame, really, because from what I've read, a lot of people tend to praise the sound mix of the film, but unfortunately I can't experience what the sound mix is like because of this atrocious up mix. It's not unwatchable, but it is really distracting. And I'm not like that familiar with how Black Christmas sounds. Like, this is like Last Christmas was the only time I'd ever actually seen it, and even then, you know, could tell from a mile off the sound mix was atrocious. But yeah, shame about the sound mix, but it's a good film. Oh yeah, but by the way, here's the disc. There's the artwork it came with. And we also get some art cards, which I won't take out because they're the same as on the Blu-ray covers. And we get a nice little booklet as well. Yeah, Bob Clark's career is very, very interesting. He died quite young. He died in his 50s, I believe, bless him. Because he started out doing horrors, you know, because he did, you know, Children That Play with Dead Things, Black Christmas, Dead of Night. And then he later did Porky's, which was that 80s sex comedy, and he also did A Christmas Story as well. Yeah, it's bizarre fact that the guy who directed Black Christmas also directed A Christmas Story, and I believe one of his last films was like Baby Geniuses 2 or something. So yeah, definitely a low point to end your career on. But yeah, anyway, that was it. That's everything for the moment. Till next time, so long for now.